Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Breck's Blueprint. We have really cool person joining us today, Jesse Lau, Chief Product Officer from Moxie, and I'm super excited about what we're going to talk about today. Not just technology, but AI. Jesse has a really cool background and a lot of insight on this. Jesse, before we get started, just give us a quick intro. Let's hear a little bit about your background and you and kind of um, what you've done with technology and AI before in the past.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Breck. I'm excited to be here, and of course, I love you're not only my podcast host, but also my provider. So appreciative of
Yes.
all the things you do for me. Um, the So at Moxie, I've been at Moxie for about 3 years. We help aesthetic practices run growing, thriving practices, and we try to make the owners of those practices lives easier. We started by supporting entrepreneurs, and over time, we got good enough that we earned the right to really support the entire specialty. And so, what we've really focused on is really just an incredibly high degree of quality, but also ease of use. For an aesthetics EMR that is sort of end to end for the folks who use it. Um, that ease of use part came to me from my last role. I worked at Amazon. I led product for
Yeah.
Kindle. I'm an avid reader, and I just absolutely love books. And so I spent a lot of time learning the product management trade at Kindle, really knowing how to make product features that are great and easy to use. And even though the complexity, sits in the background, you never really want to put that complexity in front of your users.
Right.
And so that's where I learned to do that. Before that, before Amazon though, I was at Real Self. So on a combined basis, I've had about 10 years in aesthetics, which is was never my dream. If you're watching this podcast instead of listening, you'll probably have arrived at that conclusion already. But it's been just an absolute pleasure to have gotten to be a part of the aesthetics industry and to be able to have had my little piece of contribution to it through the work I've done at Moxie.
Yeah, absolutely. And with your background, you've seen it, into the user from the beginning, like you've seen all pieces of it. And so one thing that we wanted to kind of just touch on, before we get into the nuts and bolts is like your thoughts on how we use, AI daily and what we're utilizing that for and how it's kind of progressed into our lives without us, sometimes even knowing it.
Yeah, Breck, I wanted to, yeah, I'll share some of my experiences, but I'd love to hear how you use AI. I mean, for me, I find myself using it to become an expert on the things that I otherwise don't know enough about. Like,
Hmm.
I had a leak in my refrigerator, and I didn't want to like immediately go to a professional, so I asked AI what to do, and it told me how to buy a moisture monitor and
Uh-huh.
like what to expect from a pricing perspective when I did hire the professional, or what I could do instead of hiring a professional. I use it for well, I actually I'm a little more hoarse than normal. I found out that I've got a benign growth on my vocal
Oh,
cords, and I used AI to help me like try out some like non-surgery remedies before actually going to the surgeon to
hmm.
schedule a surgery, which is what I'm doing next. So those are the kinds of things I use it for in my personal life. I think professionally, what's become really interesting is I can't remember where I read it, but I read somewhere that the paradigm has shifted, where rather than using AI to learn something, increasingly you're using AI to teach. And so like you're teaching an AI to do something that
Hmm.
you've previously been doing. And so rather than you learning from it, you're giving it all the context it needs. And now AI has become, capable enough as an agent that it can follow your instructions really clearly, much better than it could have, even last year.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's been an interesting paradigm shift that we're really experiencing in real time right now.
Yeah, and that's another one of those things that like you just don't really think about. Like for me, it started like sneaking in with like the Google AI summaries, right? And like when I type
Mhm.
in something, I didn't even really realize that, okay, yes, this is an AI summary. And then with the paradigm shift that you were just talking about, I was trying to put a chat bot right on my website. And so I'm feeding all this information to it because I want it to answer like it's me, as close to that personal touch as possible. So we're definitely using it daily and some things are shifting. So what do you think about like the evolution of AI technology and where we see that going, not just personally, but professionally as well?
Yeah, well, it's funny because the underlying technology of large language models, where it predicts the next token, um, and as it does that, it ends up forming coherent sentences and paragraphs and ideas. That's actually been around for a really long time. So if you go, you just talked about Google. If you go into Google and type the letter B,
Mhm.
it's probably going to start filling in Breck aesthetics or Breck's blueprint or whatever else. And that's the exact same technology that is powering the LLMs that write whole paragraphs or whole books, right?
Yeah, it's
It's
sad to
just,
say that is what it's going to fill out because I Google myself all the time, not to learn about myself, but to get on the web page or to check Google reviews. So you're right that it probably does do that.
so it's been around for a really long time, and it was funny because what really happened was back in November of 2022, which is actually the same month my daughter was born. ChatGPT was released, and that was the first time that this capability was introduced in a way that regular people could just use it. And
Mhm.
so I was at the same time that this was released, I was on parental leave, but right before that, I was working on search suggestions. That exact project where like you type it for Kindle, you type in B, and it starts pulling up like popular books that start with the letter B.
Mhm.
And ChatGPT came out, and I had no idea they were the same technology, right? Because what ChatGPT did was so novel and innovative and felt so real that even though it was utilizing the same things that I was like literally doing at work the month before, it just felt like this transformative, like magic wand. Um, from 2022 through like early 2024, what we had was what was essentially called like one shot AI, right? Like you could ask it a question and it would start with one letter. And by the time it got to like seven letters in, it had an answer, right?
Mhm.
So if you had a question that you were uncertain about that had an uncertain answer and you asked it, um, it was just going to come up with an answer. And it might have a lot of conviction in something that's wrong, right? In 2024, first OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, but then later everyone introduced what's called reasoning models. And so maybe if you're ever in talking to an LLM now, if whether it's ChatGPT or Google or Claude, and you see this sort of like in almost like softer text, it'll say something
Mhm.
like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I'm thinking
rhetoric.
about this," right? That what's happening is it's essentially running itself over and over again to refine its idea, which gives it the ability to like find out that it's wrong and restart. And I watch that happen sometimes. Like I'll say something and it'll say like, "Okay, I think this is probably what to do, but I should go check it online." And checks online and says, oh, I realized that was wrong. That better not be my response. I'm going to change my approach to this. And so what it's doing now, all the models now reason. And so they're more like, not always, but they're still more likely to get to a good answer.
Yeah, accuracy.
That's how they know that, yeah, that accurate. That's you see these like they're getting better at like solving tests and things like that. Um, and so they're not perfect, but they're getting better and better. And a big part of that reason is because of reasoning. And then the last thing that happened, which was just late last year, was and this is still really on the cutting edge, is that Claude specifically, so Anthropic's model Claude, has been really rapidly introducing a series of features, not the model, but the features that allow it to be more impactful, allow it to be an agent, not just a chatbot. And the way that happened is because their real focus was helping developers write code. And by helping developers write code, you're helping developers build things. And so what they've done is with Claude Code and more recently with Claude Cowork and then Claude Projects, they're creating these systems that give like this ability to build things, maintain things that was originally sort of just for engineers. They're like opening up that capability for regular people. And so I've seen just an explosion of improvements in personal productivity from people who are not engineers in my company, Moxie, over the last several months.
Right. And that brings us to our next point. Like I'm seeing all the time with, EMRs and different things, it's got AI note writing and they're helping, summarize patient visits and things like that. So how is Moxie thinking about AI and how you could potentially use that for, gaining efficiencies with your providers and non-providers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we think about it all the time. And I think one of our founding principles is our job is to make providers' lives easier. And when an when an AI does the right thing, it's kind of helpful. And when it does the wrong thing, it is
Yeah.
catastrophic, right? And so and so what we have really focused on building the right things slowly rather than the wrong things really, really fast. Um, which means that we've got a like a chat bot that can help you book appointments. And like here's a great example. A year ago I was fielding lots and lots of inbounds from people who wanted to sell that capability to us to like offer to our providers. And I talked to one person who said, I said, like, well, how does it integrate with the calendar? And so, oh, it doesn't. So what happens when somebody needs to reschedule an appointment? Oh, it just books a second appointment for them, leaves them both on the books, and then sends a message to the provider to say, like, okay, now you go and do all of that
Yeah,
work.
now you have to fix
Right?
what we just messed up. Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Great, great, thank you. Like, I have no interest in that, right? And so, before we release it's released to about 30, 40 people right now because we want to get active feedback from them and learn what we can do better. But before we give it to everyone, we just make sure it works. And that's sort of a fundamental principle for us is that, shipping something that works most of the time is just not good enough. It's got to work almost every
Right.
single time. Um, but with that said, really shortly after, um, probably by the time this podcast is out, that feature will be out to everyone. And shortly after that, you'll see the AI note taker that's sitting with you in the treatment room, taking the notes, helping you write your treatment note. And then what we get really excited about is because Moxie was built for med spas and only for med spas, we have built a data structure underneath the hood of Moxie that is specific to aesthetics. So in aesthetics, there is a category called neuromodulators, and then there's a bunch of products called
Right.
Botox, Xeomin, whatever, underneath that category. And our fundamental data systems just force that to be true instead of, like some of the other systems that would say, well, you typed the word Botox here, and that's how we know it's Botox. Right. And so because our data systems understand that level of granular detail about aesthetics already, it creates the circumstances so that when you write that charting note, well, boy, it can fill in your chart, it can update your inventory, it can do all sorts of things all at once because of that sort of like fundamental data capability that I think is the foundation between good AI, which is like every single model is increasingly capable, increasingly impressive, and great applications of AI, which requires great data and instructions in order for it to deliver great outcomes.
Right. And having it integrated is just so much easier. We've talked about multiple different systems already with, ChatGPT and Claude and Google Gemini and all these different things, but having it at your fingertips. Like I remember when I found out that Word could dictate, right? This is, years ago. And I'm like, it doesn't spell anything I say correctly. And I'm like, am I supposed to say period or not? And so I was always skeptical about the note takers because, like, I talk about a lot of things, but it is so incredibly helpful just for a summary, even just a Zoom meeting like this, and especially with patients. And to me, I think it allows me as a provider to not feel as rushed because I can sit there and really listen and not have to worry about taking notes and writing everything down. And like I can sit there and listen and absorb. And then, if I need to make an adjustment to the summary after, fine. Like that's easy. But it's
You know,
advice.
like I said, one of our fundamental principles is our job is to make your job easier, right? And I was recently visiting a number of practices, some of which who are on our software, others who are not. And one of the practices that wasn't using our software um, didn't even, wouldn't even. They had a pile of iPads lined up at the sort of the practitioners' desks.
Mhm.
Not a single one of them ever got unplugged and brought into the treatment room, and it's because the software they used distracted from their ability to treat. Like they weren't able to make eye contact,
Right.
and they weren't able to listen the way they wanted to. Um, our software doesn't do it yet either. It's coming. It doesn't do it yet either. But it's sort of like core to our principles is we want you to be able to do your best work, making eye contact, listening, and just know that the notes are getting taken. Just
Yeah.
like just know that if you've got a treatment plan you're building, that treatment plan is going to get sort of like built automatically from your words, and then so that you can be present with your patient. And that for me was what my biggest takeaway is. I just watched over and over again these providers at this practice. They like, oh, I got to go get a post-it note. So they're like running
Right.
out to get a post-it note rather than even like bringing in an iPad or a phone to take the notes live. And it's because they've treasured that ability to like be present with their
Yeah.
patients so
And
so
we
so
have math
much.
science brains. We are not English majors. Okay. We don't like writing the notes, right? Like we want it, if we're taking a test, we want it to be an ABCD. We don't want an essay,
That's
so
right.
those things are incredibly helpful for us. And, ultimately all of this comes down to, how does it affect and impact our customers? How does the end game really turn out? And would love to hear some of your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. Again, like and I'll speak about this first as how our application of AI affects us and our customers, and then I'll apply that to how it affects practices and practices affecting
Yeah.
their customers, because it's kind of the same thing. For us, we have a much higher tolerance for mistakes that are internal, right? Like we have an AI that runs around all of our documents and helps us find the right answers because I don't know if it's in a Word doc or in Google or in this
Right.
other thing called Notion, right? Where is this document? Where is this information that I saw one day? And so we have an AI that runs around finding that stuff. And because we've not done great work with our data structures internally for some of our documentation, sometimes it gets me the wrong answer. And like I can tolerate that because I like it says like here's the wrong answer and here's 4 resources where you can go and figure it out. And I can go through and I can figure out the right answer. And so it saved me 15 minutes, but I had to use a little bit of judgment to get to the right answer. Like that level of quality is something we can tolerate internally. We will not tolerate for our customers, right? It has to be the right answer every single time. So the AI in Moxie Suite that is the most commonly used today is our help desk, right? And the reason our help desk works so well and solves 80% of our customers' queries before they have to talk to a human, um, is because it's backed by really, really well written, comprehensive help desk
Right.
articles. And so the AI knows how to answer the question because it has the right information. And occasionally it'll give the wrong answer, and we like immediately update the help desk article and fix it to make sure that it doesn't do that again. Um, and so, like as I think about taking that framework and putting it in place for a practice serving their providers, there's kind of 2 questions. Like one, where are the places where you can tolerate a higher degree of failure? Like as a practice owner, Breck, I'm sure you might ask, like, hey, is it time for me to grow my location? Should I like, am I ready to hire? That's a good conversation for you to have with an AI, right? Like, because there's not an exact answer to that,
Right.
right? And it's not touching your customers. Whereas using an AI for, say, um, recommend like building a treatment plan. Like, would you ask AI, hey, you know me, you know my treatments, like write a treatment plan for my customer, for my patient. Like, are you going to trust the AI to tell you how many units of tox to inject or like what
No.
dosage of GLP-1? No, of course not. Right. And so like thinking about where are the places where I can tolerate mistakes. Usually that's back of house, right? Not front of house. And then And then where are the softwares where I can trust that there won't be mistakes? And that's the second part. And so for us, that's how we focus things is we're not bringing the AI out until we have a high degree of trust that it's just not going to make mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. And that's ultimately what we want because as a provider, I told you we're not English majors. We usually are not very tech savvy either. Sorry, providers, but a lot of us are not. And so I feel like when something fails the first time we use it, it's even harder to get us to go back and to try it again, even if the problem's been solved. So getting it as correct as possible before rolling out is extremely vital for people with, type A math science brains like I do. So it's very insightful. Jesse, any other thoughts about AI technology, personally, professionally, anything that you can think of that we have not touched on that you want to have in the closing comments?
You know, maybe the one thing I would say is that I would I would push back, Breck, against you saying that you're not tech savvy. Um, and like that's you, but I think that's, frankly, like most of the practices who I talk to on a day-to-day basis, they tell me they tell me something similar. Like my field is medicine, my field is not, technology. And my opinion is that's because you've been using the wrong technology, right? Like when a customer comes to me and says, "Hey, this thing didn't work the way I was expecting, and I know I'm not tech savvy, so can you just show me how to use it?" My first answer is like, if I didn't build it in a way that's easy to use, then it's my fault, not yours, right? And so I think a lot of the people saying like, "Oh, I don't feel tech savvy," is actually because they're using tech that wasn't built for them, right?
Maybe.
Um,
I just got a new
but
iPhone and
I
I had to go into Apple because or into AT&T and I was like, I don't want to try to erase my old phone. I don't want to have to do any of this. I want you to put all my apps on there, bring all my text messages over, all my photos over. Like maybe it's just me not having the confidence, right, to do it, but I just don't want to mess it
That's right. And
up.
and that is my last word here is that the way that AI is progressing is moving at an incredible pace. And the like fundamental technology that sits underneath the AI is astounding. Like completely beyond my own comprehension to understand what's happening. But the ability to use it for anyone is actually the much easier. Like Claude, which is the tool that we're the happiest with right now, is free. You use it for free, and it takes a long time before you get to a limit, right? And so for folks who are like scared or thinking like, oh, I only use it in Google, or I don't know how I might use it in my day to day, I would just say like the learning curve getting there is a good deal easier than you think. And for the folks listening to this podcast, I suspect most of them went to nursing or medical school for many, many, many years. And you're gonna learn it
Yeah.
a lot faster than you learned your trade,
Yeah,
right? So
I took a class, like a 30 days. So you spend 10 minutes a day instead of, scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or whatever. I took 10 minutes every night to learn about a new technology, like whether it was Chat GPT or Claude, because I wanted to also be prepared, for this podcast. And I think that knowledge is power, right? If you decide to do anything with it, then great. But like I learned from doing, and I'm sure a lot of people do. So, hopping on Chat GPT and asking it to help me write a blog article, then I can easily look through and change and adjust because I can tolerate anything that's not to my liking for something like that, since it's not patient facing yet, is a lot easier. So
yeah.
really,
Well, I'm curious to know like what is the biggest learning you've had since you've been spending that time doing it?
yeah, I would say trying to integrate that chatbot to my website was, I mean, it made me realize that there were so many policies and procedures and processes that it's in here, but I didn't have it on paper well. Like I didn't
That's right.
have it spelled out. Like I can answer your question, but I can't have that replicated, with either if I hired a virtual assistant or if I hired somebody else, I have to have this be able to be replicated, right? It has to be able to scale. And it made me realize that I did not have as many things documented, as I thought.
Yeah.
Like I have a
Yeah.
lot of work to do. I have a lot of work to do to get this in order so that whether it's a chat bot or a person or whoever AI can follow it and I can improve upon it. And so I've got to put some more effort in essentially just getting things down to make sure that I'm utilizing it to its fullest because like you said the paradigm shift has been from a search engine now to a learning like it's learning from you and I have to feed it the right information. So,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And like the good thing about it is the same sets of things that make AI good are what would make an employee good, right? Like they both would benefit from that same documentation. And it's just in the past, like it wasn't so clear to us in the past
right. I got
when it
a
was just
60
people we were
page,
training.
weight loss protocol and make sure and everything's in there, but trying to schedule an appointment in the system, no, don't have those few steps down yet. So, gotta work on that. But Jesse, it was a pleasure. Everyone, Jesse Lau, Chief Product Officer from Moxie. As you can tell, he is a wealth of information. I'm super excited to be partnering with you guys. I learn something every time I talk to either a Moxie provider or a Moxie employee, and feel really, really lucky for this partnership and for us to grow together.
Yeah, me as well. And that weight loss protocol is has worked well for me. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jesse, for trusting us. We appreciate it. Thank you again, and we will chat soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.